Look at all these beautiful people acting like they're in like a tax meeting or something like that. Like, oh, okay, all right, it's Saturday afternoon, go run some errands. Good to see you. This is great. Thank you, thank you.
This is not an unusual occurrence, everybody. So just so you know, this is how this man is on a day-to-day basis. I've been with Entertainment Studios now for about a year and a half. And I can honestly say I've never worked for a CEO like Byron Allen before in my entire career in media. It is amazing to watch this man work. He's hardcore, y'all. Like, he's being real friendly right now and jokey, but he is hardcore. He knows every number and every detail of every single business that he runs. It is actually kind of crazy. We have these meetings every Monday morning, these executive leadership meetings, and he'll be in these meetings like, you said that it was going to be $469,722.48 to execute that plan, but I see that it's $423,789.74. So what happened? I'm like, and you all quicken in your seat because you don't want to have the spotlight on you, because Byron will tell you down to the decimal point what you have and have not done right and wrong. So it's kind of an amazing and terrifying thing. But then you go on the set, right, for our comedy game show, Funny You Should Ask, right? And you go on the set, and here is this man warming up the crowd with jokes, participating in the game show with jokes, overseeing the entire production, right, with a smile and a very warm spirit. And it's amazing to watch. This man is a true performer and a completely driven, take no prisoners businessman. And Byron is having a profound influence on our culture. And not just through his 7 television networks, his ownership of the Weather Channel, his involvement in the $10+ billion acquisition of 21 regional sports networks, and his ownership of the premier news and culture digital destination for African Americans, the Grio. Yes, you can clap, that's fine. Have at it. Okay. He has also filed a groundbreaking $20 billion racial bias lawsuit against Comcast and Charter Communications that has now gone all the way to the Supreme Court, y'all. Okay? Now that is culture creation at the very highest level. Byron, it is an honor to work for you, and I'm sure this audience is dying to hear your wisdom, so let's get into it.
Oh, that's very nice of you. Thank you, Amy. Thank you. And thank you, Joy Brown. Thank you for doing this event. And this is a phenomenal event. You do an amazing job, and I am so honored to be here, and thank you, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart, and you are truly special, and I really appreciate you, so I want you to know that. Thank you for that introduction. Basically, you just said I was schizophrenic, but I love that. I call that, I love that. It's business show, right? And I learned early on, it's not show business, it's business show. If you learn the business, you can have as many shows as you want.
That is so
and I just juxtaposed those two words, and I went on that mission to know the business innately. And I knew if I knew the business and understood the business innately, then I can call my own shots until the end of time.
And then what inspired you, actually, to really have that perspective, to go outside of your comfort zone and to stretch your limits as a performer to become a business mogul?
I got fired one day.
Oh, okay, well, there it is.
and when I got fired, and it was like, what? And it was, I got fired from a television show, and I had asked for the same compensation as my white counterparts that they were getting in year 1. I was asking for that compensation in year 3 or 4, and I was told that I wasn't worth it. And my mother was my manager at the time, and they told her. And it hurt me more that they said it to my mother than anything. Right. And I said, I will never let anybody be able to say to my mother what I'm worth. Again, it hurt that they said that she brought me that news. And I said, you know what? I said, we're going to learn the game, we're going to change the game, and we'll never, ever have anybody determine our worth ever again from that moment.
Yes. Yes.
And I've never worked for anybody since that moment. And so that was it. I went to my first television convention, NATP, National Association of Television Programming Executives, in January of '81. And I was very fortunate. I was able to meet a very successful man there because I went there with my mother. I was probably 19 years old at that point, in 81, yeah. And I said, who's the best in the business? And they said, Al Massini. And I said, where is he? And he was at the New York Hilton. And they said, he's on the 45th floor or something like that. And I went up there, and it took a half an hour to get up there because the elevators were backed up, and there he was. And he had his back to the door, and I walked in, and I saw this man, and he was selling a television show. And he was telling all of these executives, this show is an amazing show. And he had on his pilot the biggest movie star in the world, Burt Reynolds, on the set of Smokey and the Bandit. And he said, I am going to buy you a satellite dish. And everybody was like, what's a satellite dish? He goes, it's a satellite dish, and I'm going to spend over $30 million to launch this show. We're going to tape it at 12:30. I'm going to put it on the satellite dish at 2 o'clock, and you're going to run the show at 7 o'clock, and everybody's going to run the same show at the same time across the nation. And it's going to start this September. And they said, what's the name of the show, Al? And he said, Entertainment Tonight. And I watched him sell that show. And I walked up, I introduced myself. I said, Mr. Massini, my name is Byron Allen. I understand you're the best in the business, and I'm here to learn from you, sir. And where are we having dinner tonight?
Wow.
And he kind of chuckled, and he said, I'm selling I'm going to be with my clients tonight. And I said, save me a seat. And fortunately, he did, and I watched him sell shows. And I watched him sell Entertainment Tonight and Star Search and Lifestyles of Rich and Famous and Solid Gold. And he became like a second father to me. He didn't have kids, and he was just so gracious as a human being. God bless his soul. We lost him. I could talk to him about anything. I mean, anything. And I would share my thoughts, my feelings that were personal. He had been through it 100 times, and he never judged me. And I remember once he said to me, and it's important for every person to have this person in their life. He said to me, you're extremely smart, which is why I'm here to help you. He said, you can do things that make me look like an amateur, and I expect that from you. Mm-hmm. And that's a great thing to hear from such a wonderful, successful man. And he was just terrific. And I just started selling television shows from my dining room table, because he started his company from his dining room table, and he told me to do the same thing, start where you are. And I just started smiling and dialing about 26 years ago. And I just started calling every television station in the country and started selling my television shows. And finally, we got to about 43 shows and 5,000 hours of content. And I went to Verizon, who had agreed to spend about $23 billion to lay down cable networks, fiber networks. And I said, I'd like to offer you some. And I told them what my thinking was, and we launched 7 networks with them. And then I had a buddy come to me, and he said to me, at that point he was running a company that satellited our 7 networks, and he said, I want to have dinner with you. And I said, sure. And he said, you may not know this, but before I became the chairman and CEO of Encompass, which satellites 24-hour networks like the Tennis Channel, NFL Channel, our channels, he said, I used to be the chief operating officer of the Weather Channel. And he says, I know you're not thinking about weather here in LA because it's always 80 degrees and sunny, but it's a great business. It's a phenomenal business. And the people who own it together in a partnership are not getting along, and you should buy it. And he says, you're the perfect person to buy it. And he goes, the best way I can describe it, it's a beautiful home in a beautiful neighborhood in a very bad marriage, and you can get a great price. And I said, okay. And I pursued it. And I got to tell you, that's something that buying an asset like that was something that we as African Americans have to do a lot more of. And I always said, for me, I don't want to play in the Negro leagues. I'm going to play in the global leagues. And so when I saw the Weather Channel, I said, that's very Americana and iconic, and it's something that the planet will always need, best in class in weather information. So I went after it ferociously, and it wasn't easy, but I had a lot of luck in getting it, and that the investment banking firm that had the assignment to sell it didn't want to let me into the process because they didn't take me seriously. And they were like, well, this asset's going to go for over $300 million. Where are you going to get this money? And I said, don't worry, I got that. And they were like, okay, show it to me. I go, well, show me the books. And we went back and forth. And I got into it, and I said, well, who owns it? And we got into it. I was really fortunate that one day I was at a coffee shop, and I started talking to this guy next to me. And I was like, hey, what's your name? My name is Steve. What's your name? Byron. How you doing? All right. What you up to? I just moved here from New York. Well, what brings you here from New York? He goes, I just bought a bank. I said, well, what bank did you buy? He said, I bought a bank called IndyMac. I go, IndyMac? I said, I saw that on the news the other night. I go, everybody was standing out front trying to get their money out of that bank. He said, yeah, that's my bank. I said, that's your bank? He goes, well, yeah. He goes, I bought that bank out of insolvency, and I raised a bunch of money from a bunch of billionaires, and the government gave me a $10 billion backstop, and we're going to take over the bank and turn it around. I said, all right, all right. He said, listen, he goes, I really like chatting with you. He goes, do you have a banker? And I didn't, because that's one thing we as African Americans, we have a big problem with. We don't have access to capital. And we don't have access to capital that's not predatory. And I said, no, I don't have a banker. And the miracle of our company, Amy, is that our company is around 26 years later, when almost the first 20 years of our existence, we use factors. I had to use factors. I would take my receivables from Coca-Cola and McDonald's and Johnson & Johnson, and I would go to a factor, and they would lend me money and charge me 26% interest. The fact that I survived that, over the years, I probably paid 50+ million in fees that I did not need to pay. Okay? That is God doing great work right there to survive that. So I said, no, I do not have a banker. He says, I would like to be your banker. Just like that. He says, why don't we have breakfast at 7 in the morning? We had breakfast. We talked about the Lakers. And he was like, hey, I'm your banker. Whatever you need, you call me. I'll take care of it. So I didn't even let him get to the office. I said, hey, it's Byron. He goes, I know, I just left you 15 minutes ago. I go, yeah, I need like $5 million. He goes, okay, well, let me get to the office. We'll do the paperwork, and he took care of me. I'm like, oh, this guy really is my banker. Right? So then one day, he says to me, I'm having my 50th birthday party. Why don't you come to my 50th birthday party? And I said, absolutely. I go to his 50th. And I don't recognize I don't know a lot of these guys. So I'm sitting there, and to my left is a guy very prominent on Wall Street, Steve Schwartzman. He owns a firm called Blackstone, manages $300 billion. To my right is a guy named Howard Marks. He's got a firm called Oaktree, manages $100 billion. So I got $300 billion to my left, $100 billion to my right. I'm sitting with close to almost $500 billion. And I haven't even gotten out of my seat. And we get to know each other. We get to chatting. Steve says, let's have lunch. Howard says, let's have breakfast. I say, absolutely. I like rich people. Let's do this. So we got to know each other, and turned out that Steve controlled the Weather Channel. And he got me into the process with a friend of mine named Sandy Grushaw, which was really key. And I always knew if I had a good deal, I could find the money, because there's more money than good deals and excellent management. There's over $20 trillion out there in liquidity, $20 trillion in cash, looking for smart people, hardworking people, and good deals. Money is not the commodity. You are the commodity. You are the commodity. You are what they need. because there's a sea, an infinite sea of capital. 20 trillion bucks looking for places to go that need to generate 6+, 8+ a year in interest. So I called one of the big private equity firms on a Friday morning, and I said, I need $310 million yesterday. And he gave me the $310 million on the Monday, the following Monday, the next workday. And he said, get the clothes on the Weather Channel. And that's how we got that done.
Wow.
Because I was able to show him this was a great deal. And under my management and my management team, we would make it an even better deal. So he gave me $310 million, and he says, you've got 5 years to pay it back. And I went back, that was March of last year. I went back in August of last year, and I said, I know I have 5 years to pay it back. It's 5 months later. Here is your $310 million back, plus a $30 million thank you.
You guys can clap.
All right. Here's a $30 million, thank you. So then I got an email, and they said, I just want you to know we're publicly traded, and you were a shining star in our quarterly report. Wow, thank you. Whatever you need, you call me first. That, Wall Street's small, that got around quickly. And every banker showed up at my door and said, will you take my money? And that's the process. I'm here to make you money. And once you show them that you can make them money, they show up at your door and say, let's do this. Next thing you know, bam. Fox had to, when they sold to Disney for $71 billion, the government said, you need to sell these regional sports networks for whatever in the 90 days after we close. Myself and Sinclair were able to get in there and buy that for $10.6 billion because the capital was available to us. I'm buying television stations. So we bought these television stations, NBC, CBS, Fox. The capital's there. What's not there is you. Your entrepreneurial intellect is what's needed, because there's a lot of capital that needs to be put to work so that they can make sure that these pension funds are properly funded. So I share that with you to know that is the most important thing that we must get corrected as entrepreneurs. Capital, capital, capital. And we don't have it. So I'm going to wrap it up because I want to share something with you. For me, the reason why I filed these lawsuits, for a number of reasons. The main reasons I wanted to deal with the fourth and final chapter forever. Coretta Scott King was a friend of mine, and I really seriously pursued Coretta, and I said, Coretta, I want to look at you, and I want to look at Martin Luther King through your eyes, because you were married to him, and you had 4 children with him, and no one knew him better than you, and no one loved him more than you. And yet he was so spectacular, and I have to understand him better. And she granted me the rights to her life story to really look at that amazing love story of Coretta and Martin. And I really got to know her, and I'll never forget, she said something to me. She says, as black people, we had 4 major challenges. Number 1, end slavery. Number 1. Yeah, number 1. Only one person cared about slavery being everybody else like, oh, what the hell? By the way, this August 20th is the 400th anniversary of the first slave ships to arrive in Jamestown, Africa to start the slave trade. 400 years, and then back to Jamestown, America. So end slavery, number 1. Number 2, end Jim Crow, which I think is more, just my opinion, I think it was more damaging than slavery. Because as slaves, we were an asset, and we were brought here to make them wealthy. When we were freed, we became a liability. And then that's when they said kick in Jim Crow and murder them and lynch them and kill them and incarcerate them. They are no longer an asset, they are a liability. This is not about the color of our skin. This is about the color of money and divvying up that great American pie. It's about fear and competition from us. It's not about the color of our skin. It's about, I'm not going to share any of these opportunities with you. So now you are a liability and I must lynch you. Jim Crow, right? She said, number 3, achieve civil rights. And then she kind of choked up. And I could hear it, and she said, and the real reason they killed my Martin, achieve economic inclusion. And she said, they didn't kill him over the speech, I Have a Dream. They killed him over the speech that everybody should read many times, The Other America. Go on YouTube, Google, it's there, The Other America. That's the speech that got him killed. There are 2 Americas. One America has access to opportunity and jobs and mentorship and capital that's not predatory. What does it matter if I sit at the same lunch counter as my white counterpart and I cannot afford the same hamburger? There are 2 Americas, and 2 Americas will not survive. We need 1 America. It's as if he wrote it yesterday. I'm gonna wrap this up, Joy, because I want them to hear this part. So I said, Mrs. King, I'm gonna deal with the 4th and final chapter. Your generation was phenomenal. Our generation will take care of the 4th chapter. And that's why I filed the lawsuits against Comcast and Charter. And I filed them using the Civil Rights Act of 1866, 1988. And this was a law that was put on the books in the year of 1866 to protect the newly freed slaves, to make sure we had economic inclusion in government contracting and commercial contracting, because they knew that once our black asses were free, they would not include us, and they needed to put laws on the books to protect us. So I used that law to get them to understand, hey, you as an industry can't spend $70 billion a year licensing cable networks, and not 1 penny goes to black-owned media. This is important for you to know, because this was put here to deal with the 4th and final chapter. I filed the $20 billion lawsuit against Comcast and $10 billion against Charter to get them to the table. They couldn't shake us at the Ninth Circuit. The Ninth Circuit, they went to the Ninth Circuit not once, twice, and the Ninth Circuit says, no, there's validity in this case. They took us to the Supreme Court. We didn't take them to the Supreme Court. How much are you up against the ropes when you have to go to the Supreme Court to get black people off of you? And the Supreme Court didn't take most of the case. The Supreme Court is letting most of the case go forward. The only thing the Supreme Court is looking at, what is the definition of the discrimination? They're only weighing in on a nuance of, did you discriminate because he is solely black, or did you discriminate because one of the reasons is that he's black? It doesn't, they've lost. In 8 months, you give me all your emails, your texts, and your contracts, and I can show the world 300 African Americans came to you, pitched a network, and you turned them down. And people think that I sued them because they didn't buy my networks. The real reason I sued them is because 5 African Americans put their money in, started the Black Family Channel. Marlon Jackson of the Jackson 5, Cecil Fielder, the baseball player, Willie Gary, class action lawsuit attorney, Evander Holyfield, the boxer, and Alvin James, the entrepreneur. Black Family Channel. Comcast crushed them. Okay, so I took note of that, and I wasn't happy about it. But what really upset me is when Curtis Simons of BET, head of distribution, started the Black College Sports Network. in partnership with all of the HBCUs. And he tried to launch the Black College Sports Network that would have paid all these HBCUs millions and millions of dollars, and all these black kids would have gone to college for free. Comcast and Charter turned it down. And that's when I said, guys, I'm gonna light you up like a Christmas tree. So I have to wrap up, but I want you to use this law. And I want you to hold corporate America accountable. It's been 400 years to get to this moment. This is our moment to deal with the fourth and final chapter. And the last thing I'm going to say, Joy, and I love you, forgive me for going so long. This law is so important, and we must win this case, and we must use it, because the one thing I want African Americans to do more than anything, have a calculator, know the numbers, and hold everybody accountable for real economic inclusion. Next on my list, and I really want the Supreme Court to look at this, because I want somebody out there to give thought to this. The United States government has a $1 trillion government worker pension fund. All the government workers, their pension fund paid into it. A lot of people of color, $1 trillion. Not one penny managed by African Americans. Now, when you start to put that money in the hands of professional money managers, when Joy Brown comes to them and says, I have this venture, it's easy for her to get $300-400 million to do what she needs to do, because she does have the talent, and you have the talent, and you have the talent. We now have to position ourselves to succeed and win and build generational wealth. 400 years too late. Let's do it. Okay? Thank you.
Let's be really honest. Are you still talking? I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I just want to say, Byron Allen has never been hotter than this moment right now. Take it. Take it. Yo, that was crazy. Don't go anywhere. Seriously, who was taking notes? I need that whole YouTube on my house. Like, that was incredible. Thank you so much. I know. What do you say to that? Everything. Jules.
He answered all of my questions. It was great. We're done.
But right now, we're not done with you, though. Okay. Please help me in congratulating our 2019 Icon of the Year, Mr. Byron Allen.